transport or a track, but we didn't really know what would it look like, how would it play out. And it's concept art like this that kind of gets us to that point. So now we're going to get into encounter design, and I'm going to hand it over to Scott here, and he's going to give you guys a little bit of info about how we bring all the creatures to life.
Hi, everyone. So the very first thing we do when we start talking about an encounter is actually just sort of brainstorming creative ideas. We get 5 to 7 designers in a dimly lit room, no windows, and we just start throwing out crazy ideas. Now, these ideas can really come from anywhere. It might be what the boss looks like. We have an idea for, we see something really cool in the boss, whether it's a really cool hand, like he's got ends and blades, so we know that he's going to do some kind of sword attack. It might be the room. The room might inspire us. In some cases, we actually have technology that can inspire us. Like in the Lich King experience, we found out that vehicles were a really big part of the expansion, and a programmer came in and explained to us, well, it turns out you can put vehicles on top of vehicles. And there was like this light bulb that went on in the designer bullpen where we all thought, okay, if we can do vehicles on vehicles, we are so doing Voltron. And that turned into Memoron. So during brainstorming, one of the things we really have to do early on is identify what new art we need and what new technology we need. So we knew we were doing some kind of Voltron boss, but we knew we were going to need need brand new models for that and a host of new technology to support vehicles on vehicles. Other things we of course have to answer is what makes the encounter cool. What's going to make making sure you're not in the fire this time different than all the other times you've been doing it? What makes the tank and spank not just the tank and spank? What's going to make this council fight different than other council fights? And so that's, with every single boss, we try to find the one thing that's going to make that raid boss pop. And then another important thing as we're going through designing out an entire raid or a dungeon is we're really trying to provide you with a variety of different experiences within one zone. So we don't want to have tank and spank, tank and spank, tank and spank. We want to make sure it's like, okay, maybe you have the, easy to understand tank and spank, mix it up with some kind of ads fight, and then maybe do something a little bit crazy at the end. So once we have an idea about what we're going to do, then we actually have to start bringing it to life. So we use a proprietary tool called WoW Edit. It's our own internal tool. We have a team of programmers that do an awesome job at giving us this really, really powerful tool. And the things we do with it are creature placement within dungeons. We create the spells for those creatures to cast. And we also do action scripting, which are things like them actually moving around while they're out of combat, doing things like running away, all those kinds of things. So for the first time at Blizzcon, we're actually going to show you what WoW Edit looks like. And this is a screenshot of our actual internal tool. What you see here is drag, throw, and keep. This is what a designer actually sees when we're working at our desk. What you see here are the trolls. And also the one troll that's selected up there with the blue sphere, that path you see is the actual path the designer has created by placing all those points. So then all these dialogues, what you can see on the right is the complete list of all the spawns within the dungeon, that tree view. And then you select that, go over to the other spawn where you do properties, and what we're showing at the bottom here is where you can actually set the action and say, hey, if you're going to spawn, why don't you path? So, and here we have another dialogue. This is actually the dialogue for creature editing, and this is actually Onyxia. This is the Onyxia that you'll see in 3.2.2 right here. This is what we see. It's got things like on your left, you have like her name, the fact that she's a dragon, what she looks like. At the bottom left is the loot. I know you guys love the loot. Up at the top right are things like how much health she has, how much damage she does. And then over on the right is her spells and abilities. So look over that, because I know you've been guys wanting to see like how we actually figure out, how we set up how much she deep breaths.
What's up with that deep breath?
So
looks like that deep breath is random. Weird.
Yeah, it's strange like that. So you can see here, we actually can set random ranges for abilities. Like at the very top, you see Dragon Tail Sweep. that happens every 15 to 20 seconds. There's some randomness there. So that's what sometimes confuses all of you about just how, oh, she deep breaths more. Well, some of that's just because there's a range where that happens, and sometimes you fight her and you got a little bit unlucky and she did it more. Sometimes you got lucky and she did it less. And we'll move along. And so after we've set up all these encounters, we've got it all working, then we go into a serious playtesting mode. And we play the dungeons first. One cool thing about the encounter team is that there's 5 of us. And that makes for playtesting dungeons really, really easy, although someone has to tank and someone has to heal, and we have to figure that out, and usually there's fighting about that. So we play the dungeons, go through a whole ton of iteration with the dungeons. We play it first time before anyone else sees it. You know, start doing a boss fight and goes like, oh, that went way too fast, or oh, that was way too much damage. Oh, what just happened? Sometimes that happens. And then after we get done with it, we send it off to QA. They start looking at, they're looking for bugs, but they also give us a lot of actual feedback about the dungeon. They come back and say like, hey, these were our impressions of it. This was really fun. This sucked. This was the coolest thing we've ever seen. And then you get to the point where, all right, PTR happens, and then we put everything on the PTR. We do listen to the feedback. We love hearing things on the PTR from people doing the raids, the dungeons. Although we don't say a lot, I'm one of the few people on the Dungeons and Raid team that post on the forums as Dalo, but we do actually read it all. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Corey, who's going to go through Cataclysm dungeons, and you'll slowly start seeing what you have coming forward in the next expansion.
Okay, let's get into the juicy stuff. So this is a slide everyone always likes to see. This is our kind of what we call like a dungeon matrix. This is a layout of a little flowchart of all the dungeons we're planning and raids that we're planning for Cataclysm. So you can see we've got a lot of raids we're planning to have at ship. We want to have 4 full raids ready to go at ship for everyone. We've always said we want to have more in-game content here than we ever had, and we plan on doing it. Grim Batal, Skywall, Firelands, something called Blackwing Descent, you're going to learn a little bit more about later. Huge selection of dungeons, as well as, like we've talked about earlier, we've some old world heroics, with Shadowfang Keep and Dead Mines. So first dungeon we're going to hit on is Abyssal Maw. Abyssal Maw is a 5-player dungeon. It's located, like I said earlier, in the sunken city of Vashir. The entrance into Abyssal Maw is in the sunken city. It's actually a giant vortex in the center of the zone. Getting near the vortex will actually pull you down into the elemental plane of water. From there, you can have access to the 2 separate Abyssal Maw dungeons that we're going to have. Now, there's a lot of cool story behind these dungeons. Like they're located in the dungeon floor in essence because they're in Vashir, but the actual dungeons themselves are in the elemental plane of water. There are these ancient temples that were created by Titans for water elementals. That's what they've always been there for. But since the advent of the Cataclysm, Naga heard about this stuff